Another senior White House official jumps ship. Jim Mattis says he'll step down as US Defense Secretary as a day after Donald Trump announces he's pulling troops from Syria. A further delay for the presidential vote in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The Election Commission says it's been pushed back to December the 30th after ballot materials caught fire. And the French government puts emergency measures before the National Assembly to try to calm weeks of yellow vest protests. Welcome to the France 24 newsroom in Paris. I'm Alexander Orcott. And we begin in the United States, where Jim Mattis is due to leave as Defense Secretary in February. In his resignation letter, the retired Marine Corps general said he's stepping down so that Donald Trump can appoint someone with views more aligned to his own. This comes a day after the US president announced that he's withdrawing US troops from Syria, despite opposition from US allies and his own military officials. With further reactions to that announcement, here's Brian Quinn.
After Donald Trump's surprise decision to withdraw U.S. forces from Syria, another military departure. On Thursday, Defense Secretary James Mattis submitted his resignation, specifically citing policy disagreements.
We must do everything possible to advance an international order that is most conducive to our security, prosperity, and values, and we're strengthened in this effort by the solidarity of our alliances. Because you have the right to have a Secretary of Defense whose views are better aligned with yours on these and other subjects, I believe it is right for me to step down from my position.
Mattis had previously warned that an early withdrawal from Syria would be a strategic blunder. That view shared by many U.S. legislators, who were also surprised by Trump's Wednesday decision.
A decision made in a cavalier fashion in terms of our allies in the fight against terrorism, and a decision that is a Christmas present to Vladimir Putin, to give him license in Syria.
Lawmakers from Trump's own Republican Party criticized the move as an abandonment of America's Kurdish allies and a threat to Israel, saying America's work in Syria isn't done.
It is clear to me that if you withdraw now, based on the conditions on the ground, Iran is a big winner inside of Syria. A corridor between Tehran to Lebanon will exist to funnel weapons to Hezbollah and other forces aligned against Israel. And most importantly, none of us believe that ISIS has been defeated.
Despite the pushback, Trump has shown no signs of changing course, replying to criticism by saying it's time to focus on America and bring its youth back home where they belong.
Well, Donald Trump said he's withdrawing forces from Syria because the Islamic State group, he says, has now been defeated. But many US allies disagree with that, and in particular the Kurdish-led forces that fought the jihadists with US air support. The Kurds say the decision will leave them vulnerable to both the IS group resurgence and renewed assault by Turkey. Emerald Maxwell has the story.
It's come as a shock, and to these Kurds in particular, it feels like a betrayal. In this Syrian town on the border with Turkey, they came out to denounce Donald Trump's decision to withdraw US troops from Syria. The United States has been the main ally and backer of the Kurdish-dominated Syrian Democratic Forces in Syria's long-running war.
We reject Trump and consider it a decision betraying the Kurdish people.
We were counting on them, but they let us down in our darkest hour. They're supposed to support us and back us.
Thousands of Kurds also gathered outside the headquarters for the US-led coalition in northern Syria. They fear that the United States pullout makes the Syrian Democratic Forces vulnerable to attack, because it will give the Islamic State group a chance to rebuild. But they also feel abandoned in the face of threats from Turkey. Ankara views the Kurds and the Syrian Democratic Forces as terrorists and wants to intervene against them. In recent days, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's government has stepped up the rhetoric. Shortly after Trump's announcement, Turkey's defense minister told a Turkish news agency that when the time comes, Kurdish militants in Syria will be buried in their ditches.
We will never bow to Erdogan's threats or let them affect us, and we don't accept the international silence regarding his threats.
With the US out of the picture, the Kurds are looking elsewhere for allies, including France. 2 top Kurdish representatives will fly there for talks on Friday.
We now move on to the Democratic Republic of Congo, where elections have been postponed for a week until the 30th of December. The Commission cited a recent blaze which destroyed the majority of voting materials for the decision, while simmering ethnic tensions and a fresh Ebola outbreak have also played a role. The candidates have been told they can continue to campaign nationwide outside of the capital. Francois Vibor has more.
After days of uncertainty, it's now official. Sunday's presidential election in the Democratic Republic of Congo will be postponed by a week.
The presidential, legislative and provincial votes will take place on the 30th of December 2018.
The Electoral Commission said its decision was based on the technical and logistical difficulties to organize the vote itself. On Wednesday, fires in Kinshasa had destroyed thousands of ballot boxes and bulletins. This comes amid tense conditions in the run-up to the election. On Thursday, the governor of Kinshasa had declared a ban on campaigning in the capital, leaving opposition candidate Martin Fayulu blocked outside the city, while his supporters faced off against riot police. In the western province of Mai-Dombe, ethnic clashes last week left at least 45 dead, while in the east, there are reports of a new Ebola outbreak. Sunday's election was meant to decide a successor to President Joseph Kabila, who's been in power for now 17 years. But Congolese voters will have to wait just a little longer to pick their new leader.
The DRC's presidential poll has been repeatedly postponed for more than 2 years, and the latest delay will no doubt anger both opposition supporters and create concern among election observers. Our correspondent in Kinshasa, Thomas Nicolon, earlier sent us this analysis.
The presidential election has already been delayed several times in DR Congo since 2016, and it has been postponed again by the Electoral Commission until the 30th of December, 7 days. According to the Electoral Commission, the fire that destroyed a warehouse last week with 8,000 voting machines and paper ballots in it is the main reason why the election has to be postponed again. The paper ballots had to be ordered from the manufacturer in South Korea, and the Electoral Commission was not able to get the paper ballots in time to the city of Kinshasa. It'll be interesting to see how the opposition reacts to this delay. On Wednesday, Martin Fayulu was still saying that he would never accept another delay and that Joseph Kabila would have to step down. So it'll be interesting to see if he changes his mind now that the delay is official. Already on Thursday, hundreds of students were protesting in the Unikin University against this delay.
Tensions are running high between Serbia and Kosovo once again, after yet another failure to find common ground during talks in Brussels. The dispute centres around Serbia's refusal to recognise the independence of Kosovo, a former province that broke away 2 decades ago, while a recent decision by Kosovo's parliament to create its own army has added fuel to the fire. Our correspondent in Belgrade, Laurent Roy, has sent this update from the border.
Bujanovac in southern Serbia has a mainly Albanian population. This large village could become part of Kosovo, while the north of Kosovo, with its Serb majority, could be annexed to Serbia. The two presidents have seized on this idea as an exit strategy for negotiations on Kosovo's final status. The Albanian council in the southern Serbian settlement is in favour.
We've shown a will to be equal with all other, with majority, but we done of treating the Albanians as secondary grade citizens.
Kosovo Serbs are concerned about this. The Serbian Orthodox Church is opposed to border change. The majority of Kosovo Serbs live in the south and wouldn't benefit from any land swap.
This will probably mean an exodus of Serbs from this area. And as we have seen, population exchanges have always been accompanied by tragedy and victimhood.
France is among the European countries who are not opposed to the initiative, provided a full agreement is reached. But analysts warn that this could be destabilizing.
What will happen with Serbs living in Bosnia? What will happen with Serbs and also with Albanians in Macedonia, and not only the region, because we have these ethnicities that would like to have some kind of independence or join other countries all over Europe.
This idea of the Serbian and Kosovo presidents seems to be a lone initiative, and nobody has forgotten the breakup of Yugoslavia when every redrawn border resulted in deadly violence.
Now, here in France, the government of Emmanuel Macron has put forward a draft law of emergency measures before the National Assembly aimed at calming the yellow vest protests that have rocked the country for 5 straight weekends. The grassroots movement was sparked by planned fuel tax hikes that have now been scrapped and has grown to include wider anger over policies deemed to favour the rich elites in the cities. Emerald Maxwell takes a closer look at the concessions the government is offering.
The French president has already cancelled the planned increase in fuel tax and promised no hikes in gas and electricity prices this winter. But under pressure from yellow vest protesters, the French parliament is voting on a series of further concessions from Emmanuel Macron's government. Amid weeks of often violent protests, the draft text specifies 4 emergency measures: a €100 increase for 5 million minimum wage earners, abolishing tax on overtime pay for all workers, scrapping a planned tax increase for a majority of pensioners, and an exceptional tax-free bonus of up to €1,000 paid for by employers. Macron has also responded to an online petition signed by more than 1 million people that suggests ways to fight fossil fuel pollution without raising fuel taxes. He called the petition a citizens' act, said they were right, and that he was listening. That message came 10 days after he went on TV to apologise to protesters and announced his concessions to an audience of more than 20 million people. The president's approval ratings, though, continue to plunge to 23% in the most recent poll.
Now, after more than a month in a Tokyo jail, the ex-Nissan chairman Carlos Ghosn will soon walk free on bail. The 64-year-old has been detained since November the 19th amid accusations that he underreported his earnings by millions of dollars. Before his arrest, the Brazilian-French national was revered in Japan and even became a comic book hero for rescuing Nissan from the brink of bankruptcy. And he says he now intends to restore his honour. Finally, 2 Chinese nationals have been indicted by the United States Justice Department on cyber espionage charges. The men are accused of hacking into Western corporate and government computer networks to steal intellectual property and business secrets. Brian Quinn has the details.
State-sponsored corporate espionage. U.S. authorities unveiled indictments against 2 Chinese nationals Thursday. Zhu Hua and Zhang Xinglong are accused of being part of the hacking group known as Advanced Persistent Threat 10. The FBI says they acted in association with China's Ministry of State Security to steal intellectual property and business secrets from at least 2008 to 2018 in what officials denounced as Beijing's economic aggression.
No country poses a broader, more severe, long-term threat to our nation's economy and cyber infrastructure than China. China's goal, simply put, is to replace the U.S. as the world's leading superpower, and they're using illegal methods to get there.
The indictment indicates some 45 targeted victims of cyber attacks, including defense and technology firms, U.S. government agencies, including NASA, the personal information of some 100,000 U.S. Navy personnel, and managed service providers around the world, each of which could give hackers access to dozens of companies that use those MSPs to manage their IT systems. The US and Western allies, including the UK, Australia, and New Zealand, accuse Beijing of breaking a 2015 pledge to halt cyber attacks on Western companies and commercial infrastructure. Thursday's indictments come amid heightened tensions between Washington and Beijing. The Trump administration is pushing for extensive reforms to Chinese economic policy to protect U.S. intellectual property and reduce a massive trade deficit, while also seeking to exclude Chinese telecoms giant Huawei from Western 5G networks and government IT infrastructure on security grounds.
Those are all our top stories for now, but stay tuned to France 24. I'll be back with more news updates in 15 minutes.